Module 14, how can miracles happen? Well, first of all, are miracles important? Are they key to Christianity? And I'd say, well, absolutely they are. First of all, the Bible is full of miracles, right from the beginning, the creation miracle, right through to the end, the new heaven and the new earth. And of course, in the Gospels and in the book of Acts and all the way through the Old Testament, particularly around the lives of certain prophets like Moses and Elijah. So the Bible is full of it. If you don't believe them, it casts great doubt on the Bible itself. Secondly, Jesus and the apostles performed miracles, and these were major signs that convinced a lot of skeptics to believe in God and believe in the truth of the gospel. Thirdly, miracles are a key proof of Jesus' divinity, because we're told in the Old Testament that the Messiah, when he comes, will perform miracles. He'll restore the sight of the blind. He'll make the deaf hear. He'll make the lame walk. And so they're crucial to Jesus's claims to be God in the flesh. And so the authority of the Bible is at stake if miracles are at stake. And then, of course, finally, the resurrection itself is a miracle. And as we've seen in the previous module, it is absolutely central to the Christian faith. At this stage, I would get them to do an exercise. So how can miracles happen? Get into small groups, either online or in small groups in a classroom, and talk about this for 5 to 10 minutes, and then come back and feedback their answers to the group. And that will then lead on to a discussion of how miracles can happen. So let's just look at some of those arguments that might come up. And perhaps a good way of doing it is to turn the question round and say, well, what are the objections to miracles? And how might we be able to answer them? And there are probably 4 major objections to miracles. The first one is this: there's no evidence they happened. How do we answer that? Well, it's necessary here, I think, to present the evidence for selected biblical miracles, pointing out that many of them convinced the hardened skeptics and surprised even the faithful, and they were accepted as facts by eyewitnesses who had strong vested interests for not believing. And this will usually push people on to one of the other 3 objections. Number 2, there are natural explanations for miracles, people will say. Generally, they'll give examples of natural explanations for miraculous events. For example, Sodom was destroyed by a volcano, the Red Sea parted because of a strong wind. The Bible itself says that, of course. The Jordan dried up because of a landslide. And the implication is that because a reasonable natural explanation can be found, there are no grounds, therefore, for claiming that God was the cause. However, the first thing we've got to say to that is that because we can find a natural explanation for some event, does not mean that God was not involved. The God of the Bible is, after all, the sustainer of the universe. He covers the sky with clouds. He supplies the earth with rain. He makes the grass grow. He sends the snow, frost, hail, and breezes. He makes the planets rotate and orders the whole universe. In fact, he determines the throw of the dice. So he works in and through natural events. And so the fact that natural explanations for some miracles can be found should not disturb someone with biblical faith. Natural miracles are, after all, part of God's providence. And second, there are actually many miracles in the Bible that cannot be explained naturally at all. How can a stick turn into a snake in the narrative around Moses? How can an iron axe head float? How can congenital blindness be instantaneously healed? These run completely counter to the laws of nature. And that brings us on to the third objection, which is that miracles can't happen because they are against the laws of science. But I'd suggest that this is based on a misunderstanding of what scientific theory actually is. The first thing is that scientific theories are not prescriptive, but descriptive. In other words, they do not prescribe what must happen, but they describe what does happen in most circumstances. So they describe how nature has behaved in the past as a basis for predicting of how it might behave in the future. And so any theory can be disproved by a single fact. And some of the most resilient of theories, like Newton's theories of motion, for example, have been destroyed by facts because they don't explain all phenomena, which is why, of course, we needed Einstein's theories of relativity. But secondly, a true scientist will change his theory to fit the observed facts. So if there's something that doesn't fit, he will think, okay, there must be something about the universe I don't understand. And a true scientist, I think, presented with true evidence, strong eyewitness evidence that a miracle has really occurred, will therefore say, well, perhaps there's something about the universe I don't understand. Maybe there is a God. And then finally, people will say, well, I've never seen a miracle. But of course, that's nonsense, because we all believe many things, many quite amazing things in history, in science, on the basis of compelling testimony, or on the basis of things that other eyewitnesses have said, or that people of authority have said. So to say I've never seen a miracle does not disprove miracles. In fact, we know from the Bible that miracles are extremely rare. They didn't occur all the way through scriptural history, but only at certain times and places and around certain people. And so what does this question lead to? Well, again, like the question about the resurrection, it will lead people back to say, well, okay, maybe, but isn't the Bible full of errors? How do we know it's really reliable? So we'll come back to that question in the future. But the fundamental question, of course, it raises is Jesus God? Is Jesus God? Because once one believes in an all-powerful being who created and sustains the universe, miracles actually cease to be an intellectual problem. And similarly, once one believes that such a God could become a man, such issues as the virgin birth, the healing miracles of Jesus, and indeed the resurrection itself, just pale into insignificance. So in teaching this course, I would then stop at this point and invite questions on the evidence for the resurrection and how can miracles happen. And then after that, take the opportunity to do some role plays. Now, you can do this if you're teaching it online in small groups. So you put them in groups of 3 or 4. Get one to play the devil's advocate, the non-Christian, and to ask all the difficult questions. And then the other 2 or 3 in the group can attempt to answer them. Give them 10 to 15 minutes and allow them to talk about it afterwards and see what they learn from it. Or alternatively, if you're in a classroom or a lecture theatre or a church building, then break them up into small groups, give them some time to think about what the answers to the questions might be. And then you play the devil's advocate yourself as the leader asking the questions, and then use the dialogue as a teaching point. And the object of this is to show them, first of all, that they can do it, to encourage them with the answers that they've got, and also to help them and train them about how to put across the answers in a more convincing and more concise way.